Good morning, students. Welcome to Sai CA Coaching Center, and this is CA MS Swaminathan with you. Students, in furtherance to what we have learned till now, let us move on with the next part of the syllabus in today's session. Now, looking at the responsibility center part divided into cost center, revenue center, profit center, investment center. Cost center refers to a place where the person is given primarily the task of controlling the costs through budgets. So measurement will happen as to whether you have overshot your budget or not. If yes, explanations required how to control it. Revenue center, marketing sales people typically will be concentrating only on the revenue targets to be achieved. Therefore, targets will be measured to know whether they are performing at the optimal level. Will they be able to reach the budget levels or not, or will they be running short of it? Profit center, maybe you could be a branch or so which could be responsible not only for the cost, not only for the revenue, for both, and therefore the bottom line. And each branch would be given a target of a particular profit to be achieved, and so that is being measured and tracked by the budgetary control department or the management accounting department. And then there is an investment center where, in addition to the cost, revenue, bottom line, you are also held responsible for the assets that you are controlling, and therefore how is the performance? Are you capacitated to incur fresh capital expenditures? If yes, how do you utilize them? All these things will be measured. Now, of course, responsibility accounting will naturally be driven, or performance reports will naturally be driven or dependent upon the type of organization structure. An organization structure, as we have learned in strategic management and CA intermediate, could be analyzed into functional type or divisional type. If it is a functional type, you just have an HR, a sales, a production, an inventory, a finance, an accounts department, and so on and so forth. It's more of a centralized setup, which is not well suited for extremely big-sized organizations. For the extreme big-sized organizations, the divisional setup would be better suited, could be based on geographies, could be based on product, could be based on customers, etc., etc. For example, our ICI itself is divided geographically into WIRC, NIRC, CIRC, EIRC or SIRC. So you could have such kind of divisions as well. If it is a functional organization, then the reporting will be addressed accordingly at the central level, because the functional heads will not have much of authority delegated to them. Whereas in a divisional structure, each division will be given relevant responsibilities and commensurate authority to execute as well. And therefore, performance measurement will have to ensure that appropriate measurement of key performance indicators is undertaken to ensure they are functioning at the optimal level. Okay. Now at the divisional level, certain the indicators that could be used could probably be financial indicators purely or non-financial as well. In the financial part, as we all know through study of financial management, you could either measure return on investment, residual income, economic value added, shareholder value added, and through the financial and non-financial part, you can have the different types of models, which are balanced scorecard, the performance pyramid, the building block model, the performance prism, and the triple bottom line as given on page 5 in the chart. Now, if we pick up item by item, maybe here a little swiftly we can move, because these concepts are known to us already. Return on investment is what? The ROI. The amount of money that stands invested in a particular business will have to fetch an appropriate return to the business. So that can be used as a measure to know about, ascertain the performance of each particular division. Now there is a concept called goal congruence under the return on investment. Now when you have, what is the significance of this goal congruence? Congruence indicates identity. All that this implies is, if in an organization there are two divisions, Division A and Division B, indeed individually the decision that Division A would be taking or Division B would be taking must not be such that it will on the whole go to adversely affect the performance of the organization. the decision that Division A would take or Division B would take must certainly be one which will benefit itself as well as something which will benefit the organization on a holistic basis. The goal congruence concept is very similar to an example that I would like to quote to you now of your syllabus part. If you are the goalkeeper in a football team and the opponent is basically coming to strike the ball and they have gone past all your players and you are the only one last line of defense, when the player actually hits the ball, is your responsibility to attempt to stop the ball, or do you collect the ball and throw it inside your goal post itself? If you do the second part, which is collecting the ball and throwing it into your goal post itself, or allowing the ball to go past you without making an attempt to stop it, you are not functioning in sync with your teammates' objective of winning the trophy or whatever be it, winning the game. So that's lack of goal congruence. I hope the point is quite clear to you. There are some numerical examples given which will explain the concept to you further. And then we have the understanding is ROI, return on investment, can therefore lead to a lack of goal congruence. Now, this issue with ROI is actually trying to be addressed through the concept of residual income, which is something more similar to our kind of net profit that we talk about, the operating levels. Now, the residual income is something. How does this address that issue of goal incongruence which might arise in the case of your ROI related assessment? Now, here each division earns its own gross margins, and then what is being looked at is each division, since it invests money in its business, there must be a minimum return that money must fetch, which logically will be equated to the opportunity cost. In other words, nothing but the weighted average cost of capital, which could be your equity plus debt. Each one of us have already done how to calculate cost of capital, the WACC, in our cost of capital chapter of CA Intermediate Financial Management syllabus. The same concept is applied here. So at least the weighted average cost of capital must be earned out of this investment. So any amount that is being any division which invests in a particular project which is not able to fund at least the weighted average cost of capital must not go ahead with its investment, whereas that which is able to generate at least the weighted average cost of capital will ensure that we break even. If it earns more, the organization is in a profitable zone. But please bear one very critical aspect in mind with regard to the residual income. When you analyze two different alternatives with regard to residual income, there could be an issue which arises in the following manner. Unless I have two different alternatives, both of the same size, meaning alternative A where I invest 10 lakhs, alternative B I invest close to 10 lakhs, then you can look just at the absolute amount, which is the rupee equivalent, and decide whether you go ahead with division A or division B, which means project A or project B. But if division A intends to invest in a project which costs 10 lakhs and yields some return of, let's say, 2 lakhs, which is 20%, whereas division B wants to invest 1 crore and will get you, for example, 3 lakhs. Now, 3 lakhs definitely is higher than 2 lakhs which division A will earn. Correct? So in absolute measure, division B gets 1 lakh more. But then relatively when you look at it, division B is yielding only a 3% return, which is 3 lakh divided by 1 crore, whereas division A is able to fetch you 20%, which is 2 lakh divided by 10 lakh. Therefore, whenever the size of the project is different, residual income can become a little bit of an issue. We need to bear in mind that concept and decide accordingly, because with regard to this example that I gave you, division A has invested just 10 lakhs and is able to fetch 2 lakhs, which means the balance 90 lakhs, which was also required to be invested by Division B in its project worth 1 crore, is now freely available. This can be invested somewhere, and if it can fetch you a return which is more than 1 lakh, then the total return from Division A will be the 2 lakh, which is on the 10 lakh invested in the business, plus a 90 lakh which is invested outside, maybe in another project or maybe in a bank deposit, whatever be. If the sigma return, if the 90 lakhs is going to give you 1 lakh and 1 rupee as a return, totally you get 3 lakh and 1 rupee through Division A, whereas through Division B you got only 3 lakhs on a base of 1 crore. So Division A is still preferable compared to Division B. Now I hope when you heard this example, something similar to that you have already learnt again in your CA Intermediate in Financial Management, and that thought would be running across your mind. It is nothing but the size of the project, the scale of the project, etc., that we would have tried to understand when we saw the IRR and the NPV as to what is to be used to decide about a project, the issues of an IRR, etc. Now, in fact, we have also learnt a concept relating to profitability index in our intermediate, which dealt with the relative concept, which is what we are looking at even over here. Next comes the concept of economic value added. Now here, as we know that if we were to analyze purely based on profits, there is some issue with regard to profits, shortcomings. Now what is that? One, profits are basically, the book profits are determined based on accounting standards and so on and so forth, and therefore they may not be in sync with other organizations, might not be comparable, correct? Because judgmental aspects are involved. Two, when we calculate the profits, well, if you look at the capital employed of a business, it includes the long-term funds, which broadly can be analyzed into capital, equity, and your debt, long-term debt. Now, the cost of long-term debt, which is represented by way of interest, is indeed factored when you calculate your profit in your profit and loss account, whereas your dividend, which relates to the cost of equity or a capital part, is not factored when you arrive at your profit, because that is more of an appropriation, correct, which is taken out after the tax payment. So here we find that the profit includes only one part of cost of capital, not the other part, and therefore to address this issue, what we try to do is we try to understand a concept called economic value added. Now, what is all this economic value added all about? It is nothing but a measure of the economic profit, and it is calculated as follows: the net operating profit after tax, okay, minus the opportunity cost of invested capital. Now, when I say minus the opportunity cost of invested capital, it is nothing but your WACC given in the question, the weighted average cost of capital, which is nothing but your cost of debt and cost of equity. Both must be considered after tax, as we have done even in intermediate. So opportunity cost of invested capital will be the after tax cost of debt and equity, and the first component will be the net operating profit after tax. Now, one key thing that we have to bear in mind with regard to the net operating profit after tax, if you want, you may open your 8th page in your study material and observe it very closely. The concept that we are now going to talk about is exactly the same as probably what we would have again learned even in our intermediate in financial management. There are two approaches to calculating the net operating profit after tax. It starts with the first one, start with operating profit, which is before tax, to start with profit after tax at the second bullet point. Let me pick up the second one first and then move on to the first one. Now start with net operating profit after tax, which means, please bear in mind, net operating profit after tax, which means we have already subtracted the tax component. Now, since we have we are starting with the profit after tax, which means we have actually subtracted the interest also. Okay, and then we have arrived at the profit. Now, when we have subtracted the interest cost, our profit would be lower to that extent. To what extent? To the extent of the interest as well. Correct? Because the interest has been debited to the P&L account. So my profit after interest will now be lower. On the lower component, I will have to pay tax. Correct? Therefore, this clearly means that the tax saving which arises out of my interest cost has already been factored in my tax which I will be paying on the profit after interest. Example is actually, let us assume that my profit, operating profit is going to be 100 rupees, my interest is 20 rupees, therefore my the net profit would be 80 rupees effectively, 100 minus the 20 rupees. On 80 rupees, I have to pay tax. Assuming that my tax rate is 40%, on 80 rupees, I will pay a tax of 40%, which is 32 rupees, and I will be left with only 48 rupees with me, which is 80 minus 32. Now, the second bullet point states, start with profit after tax. I am starting with 48 rupees. Now, this 48 is arrived at in what manner? After deducting the interest of 20 rupees. If I had not deducted the interest of 20, would I not have paid extra 4 rupee, extra 8 rupees as tax? Because 40% is my tax rate. So on 20 rupees of interest, I would have paid another 40%, which is 8 rupees as tax. Now that 8 rupees of tax which I should have paid extra has already been benefited to me. How? Because I subtracted 20 is interest, my profit has come down from 100 operating profit to 80. On 80 only I am paying 40%, which is 32, not 40% on 100 rupees, which is 40 rupees. So the 8 rupees, which is the tax shield with regard to that interest, is already built into my 48 rupees of net profit after tax that I am having. Therefore, here we say, if you look at the study material, start with profit after tax and add back the net cost of interest, which is interest cost was 20 rupees multiplied by 1 minus the tax rate of 40% is equal to 60% multiplied by 20 rupees, which is 12 rupees. Just add 12 rupees to the 48 rupees and I'm left with 60 rupees as a net operating profit after tax. This is one way of doing it in terms of a calculation. And the other way is the first one, start with operating profit, then deduct the adjusted tax charge. Now, this concept, I think, is slightly different from what you would have done in your intermediate. In fact, even here in the textbook, you will notice that this adjustment is not actually being effected, but there is a logic in this. Now, when I say that 20 rupees was my interest cost and I'm in a tax bracket of 40%, obviously if I'm supposed to pay 40% tax rate, then if I'm going to have a tax saving on my interest cost, my gross tax liability will actually drop to that extent, correct? In the previous example with regard to the bullet point 2, we saw that the final cash with us was 60 rupees, correct? The answer cannot change whether you adopt method 1 or 2. Now here what happens is, if 100 rupees is my operating profit prior to interest being deducted, and I am at a tax bracket of 40%, then, well, I know that 100 against 40% will be 40 rupees as my tax. I subtract 60 rupees, answer seems to be the same, which is fine. But what is the meaning of this adjusted tax charge? All that this implies is, see, if you have 100 rupees as your operating profit and 20 is your interest, we know that we are saving 40% on 20 rupees, 8 rupees we save because of the tax shield of the interest, correct? Therefore, my tax outflow is being reduced by 8 rupees, correct? So, I would not be paying 40 rupees as my tax on 100. but I will pay 40% minus 8%. How am I getting this 8%? 8% is basically 40% of 20 rupees is 8 rupees. 8 rupees on the operating profit base of 100 rupees is equal to 8%. So ultimately my tax outflow will only be 40% gross minus the tax shield on interest 8%, 32%, implying I should actually be paying only 32 rupees as taxation. Correct? So this is what I expect. If I have an interest cost, my tax will be 32%. So if the question were to tell you that the tax rate is after considering the tax shield of the interest, it will not be 40, it will be 32. Correct? Now, this 100 rupee, which is your operating profit, which is what in first bullet point we are taking, start with operating profit. This 100 rupee is before deducting interest. Whereas the tax percentage given to you in the question, if it states that it is after considering the tax shield on interest, which is generally not the way we have seen questions. Generally the way is, it just continues to say the tax rate is only 40, the gross rate. Then there is no problem. But if this kind of a question is given, then the rate will be given as 32% because we saw 32 is what will be the amount of taxation. So 32% will now be adjusted for that 8% tax shield. Why 32 is after considering the tax shield of interest, 100 rupees is before considering the interest, and therefore the 32% which is after considering tax must be converted into before considering the tax. Therefore, add back 8%. You arrive at the same 40% on 100 rupees. Apply 40% tax. Subtract it. You are left with the same 60 rupees. Well, I thought I will invest some time to explain this concept of adjusted tax charge to you because the paragraph exists there, but it is not explained numerically in the textbook. And if you happen to see a question given like that, maybe you might wonder what is it to be done in this case? What is the significance of this adjustment? Hopefully it is clear. Please note it down and keep it with you for a reference the day of the examination. Another way of measuring the financial aspect could be the shareholder value added, which is nothing but considering quite a few aspects in terms of share value added is nothing but the process of analyzing how decisions affect the net present value of cash to the shareholders. Okay, and whenever we talk about net present value, automatically we understand that there is a discounting involved because of the cost of capital. So the WACC will be used as the discounting rate. Okay, now it's very important to understand whether money will have to be reinvested. The money available with the business should be reinvested in the business. Is it worthwhile, or is it better to start a new business, or is it better to return the money to the stockholders or the shareholders? That depends on the ability of the entity to earn money. We have learned something like that in dividend decisions. Now, there are several factors which can affect the shareholder value analysis. Something like your points given on your 10th page, rate of sales growth, the more and more the rate of sales growth, higher and higher the value, higher the operating profit margin, higher the impact, lower and lower the income tax rate, better will be the benefit for the shareholders. More and more the investment in the working capital and fixed capital investment, the more will be the interest cost, lesser and lesser will be the value to the shareholder. Same will be for the cost of capital as well. Life of the project as well. If the longer and longer the life of a project, for the same amount of money invested, higher will be the value for the shareholders. So these are actually concepts that should be borne in mind. And then there is another important concept which deals with triple bottom line. All that this does is it introduces three factors, implying that it's a significant departure from the earlier things. Meaning, shareholders would not be concerned just with financial returns or financial aspects. Non-financial performance indicators might also be preferred to be tracked by them. And therefore, The three factors are: one, environmental, which means the impact on the natural resources like air, water, ground, waste emissions, etc. Social factors or indicators relating to your governance standards, corporate governance standards, employee motivation levels, incentivization, health, safety of the environment of the employees, the amount of money invested in training, okay, human rights, ethical behavior, etc. Economic or the financial factors, which obviously will be there. So apart from the economic or financial factors, the environmental or social factors will also have to be borne in mind. Then we find actually one of the key parts relating to from a shareholder value perspective, linking of financial and non-financial measures of performance. Now we will come to this a little later in great depth, but you have to bear one thing in mind very clearly, that specifically in the current day scenario, one just cannot look only at financial performance indicators to the complete exclusion of non-financial performance indicators. If at all you feel what is wrong with that kind of an analysis or an approach, it will be something akin or similar to yourself trying to sit and study for 14-15 hours a day without getting up from the chair, without having breakfast, lunch, dinner. Stop here and think, what will be your condition? Is it that you can only look at study and nothing about your health? If you can't, exactly the same way, financial will have to be clubbed with non-financial performance indicators as well. Then on page 11, you find linking critical success factors to key performance indicators. My example when I started the session in terms of your CA related strategic vision, and then the critical success factors of what needs to be done to achieve your CA. One was consistency, one was hard work, and then for the consistency, we had the daily study. For the hard work, we quantified the number of hours of study. Now, such kind of quantification or measurable yardsticks must be available. This is all that is being highlighted in great depth over here. So I'm actually passing by this area, assuming that definitely you will be able to understand if you understood that example perfectly.